You are listening to the Merchant Meetings podcast. Join us as we share the insights, successes, and failures that we and others have experienced in the small business space. So you and I met 10 years ago. I was 17, you were 22 at the time.
Don't tell anyone.
You guys can put our ages together. But since then, we've been a part of many different businesses together. Mm-hmm. We still work together to this day, and we're also married. Yes. And I think one of the coolest things is when you look up the definition of the word merchant, which is our last name, it means a trader or seller of things.
Yeah, someone involved in trade, yep.
Yeah, which I think is so cool considering the amount of businesses that we've been a part of together. Obviously, in future episodes, we'll dive deeper into each one of the business that we've been a part of. But just for the listeners, did you want to run through just a few of them?
So we have our enhanced supplement stores, which are mostly located in Western Sydney. There is one up in Wollongong. Shout out to our man Chris. And we also have the Merchant Media Marketing business, which is a full service social media marketing business that services other small businesses within Western Sydney. And then we have a barbershop, which is run by our man Anthony, and that was taken over from an established business maybe 13, 14, 15 months ago, something like that. And then I've done some consulting and do consulting. And that was mostly through a third party that was under a government scheme where I got to sit down with a lot of different small businesses and offer them marketing advice predominantly. But obviously when you start, looking under the hood of businesses, you see some of the challenges that they're dealing with, and I was able to help out with that as well. So that's probably been my favorite part of the businesses that we've worked in, just being able to get insights from small business and then use our marketing business and the experience that we've gained through doing that business in helping them.
And how are you able to be involved in all these businesses? Are you just like an entrepreneurial machine?
I'm definitely not a machine. The only way that you can run multiple businesses, in my opinion, is by creating a really good team. So we're certainly not self-made. I don't want to be taking credit for the contributions that other people have been putting in as well. And I think we'll have quite a few of the other boys that are involved in the business on the podcast at some point in time. But we'll just give you our perspective, from the framework that we work, and try and articulate correctly the role in which we play in those businesses.
I think my favorite business story of yours would be how the supplement stores came about. It's my favorite story, and obviously that's what we're going to dive into today. Mm-hmm. So you and I met at the gym in Penrith. It used to be called Fit and Fast, and it's pretty cool because at the moment our Penrith supplement store is located right next to it.
Yes.
But 10 years ago, you and I met at the gym in Penrith. I was a very naive 17-year-old personal trainer who knew nothing, and you were the reception boy. But not only were you just working reception, you were selling supplements out of the boot of your car. And that's because when gym members came in at night time, like the closing shift up until 10, 11 p.m., you were able to sell them supplements because nowhere else was open.
Correct, yes. So that's where I first started selling supplements, from the boot of my car. Now, at the time, the Australian dollar was actually stronger than the US dollar. So I don't think you could probably do the same sort of system that I had running nowadays. But yeah, I was able to import supplements from a retail store over in America. I think it predominantly became bodybuilding.com, but there were a few smaller ones that we used as well. And I feel like no one talks about bodybuilding.com anymore, but
it was huge.
Yeah, I ended up having my own little account manager because the orders that I was putting through exceeded over, the normal online sort of amount. And so like import and export taxes were going to be involved. And so they kind of helped me navigate around some of the taxes that were involved. But yeah, I was obviously able to sell those sorts of amounts even just from the boot of my car. And that's kind of what gave me the passion for selling supplements.
And at what point did the supplement store owner across the road, for those who don't know, the gym that Steve worked in, there was a supplement store that operated, I think, until like 7 p.m. across the road. And it's not your intention to get on his toes or anything. You were just trying to make some extra cash working reception at the gym. but he picked up wind of it, right?
Yeah, I think I probably viewed myself as so small it didn't matter. But yeah, I think obviously we had some customer crossover because it was literally a store across the road. And so eventually I was a customer of that store as well, like, for the things that I needed that I couldn't just get from America. And so he kind of said to me, look, you're taking my customers here. If you like this so much and you're clearly good at it, then why don't you just go open up your own store and you can use my brand to do that. And so that kind of sat in the back of my mind for quite some time, and I really thought, I want to do this, but I didn't have the capital, and I was probably 22 when it was sort of put forth to me, and I didn't feel confident doing that at that time, and so I sat on it for a little while. I kept working at the gym, still selling supplements out of my boot. And there was a manager there, and she was a machine. She still is, Myra. Shout out to you. She was really cool. So she never gave me express permission to be selling supplements on the graveyard shift, but I think because I was reliable and I was doing my job well, she kind of, as long as I wasn't getting up to mischief, she kind of looked the other way, which was amazing. Thank you. And so I had a really good relationship with her, and she ended up moving into a gym in Blacktown, and I still had my job at Fit and Fast in Penrith, but I was like, hey, if you're going, I kind of want to go too, so can you take me with you? And so she employed me at the Blacktown Genesis gym at the time. And so because I still had that offer in my mind of potentially opening a retail store, and I had gone to church in Blacktown as I guess a young teenager, I kind of understood the environment there, and I had some sort of context of the Blacktown market. And now that I was working there, I started doing, base level research. And so when people would come in from the gym and they'd have their shaker, I'd say, oh, what are you drinking? What are you having there? And they'd tell me, and I'd go like, oh, why are you using that? And, act interested, even though I knew a fair bit about the supplements they were taking. It kind of gave me an opportunity to talk to them, find out what they were taking, why they were taking it, did they have it recommended to them, what shops they were shopping for, and shopping from rather. And I kind of found that it wasn't like some people gave me a really good report of the supplement shop that they were getting their supplements from, because there was pretty much just one place. There was two, but one was on its way out, and so everyone was going to this one other shop, and it wasn't like some people were saying, oh yeah, it's pretty good, and some people were saying it's pretty bad. All of them were just categorically saying, no, I don't actually enjoy shopping there at all. I haven't really got good advice. I actually got this pre-workout that has 400 milligrams of caffeine. I'm taking it at 10 o'clock at night, but this is the one I had recommended to me, so I've been taking it. Just, horrible advice over and over again. And I'm like, you know what? If there is any chance of me ever running a successful supplement shop, I choose them to be my competition, because if I can't succeed against these guys, I just shouldn't be in business. And so probably after about 6 months of working there, I decided to leave my job working there, and I found a supplement shop. It wasn't a supplement shop, it was just an office that was in a little complex in Arndale Park. And I was sitting down with my friend one night at a barbecue grill in Penrith, for anyone that remembers that. It was an awesome little restaurant back then. And we were having a meal, and I was like, hey man, do you want to do this? I actually think it could work. I'm already selling this amount from my boot. I think we can do this. And he was like, yeah, 100%, let's do it. And he had a bit of experience running retail stores at the time. So he had worked for Adidas and Nike, and I think he was at Rebel during that period. And he had managed a business. And so I had some confidence that, this is someone that was, confident in the space that they were sort of working in. And, I'm sure if we pool our resources together and our skill sets together, we can make it work. Going into business with a friend, also gave me more confidence because, to be honest, you're minimizing your risk, you're spreading the risk between the two of you, but you're also able to share the workload and, bring different skills and traits to make the business, potentially work better than you could, just by your own. And so, shortly after we, went and found a lease and learned all about, what it takes to take a lease on, and, the fact that they're going to want a bond and they're going to want multiple months up front, and then there's the fit out of the shop, and then there's business insurance, and, and then you need to set up FPOS systems, and then you need to connect with suppliers, and you learn quite a bit about business when you go in ignorantly. And we essentially made it happen, and we opened up our first shop in Blacktown, Arndale Park. And it was under that franchise of the guy that we had spoken to prior, which was, it was really good to work under a framework. When you don't know what you don't know, sometimes it's good to have something that you can work inside, learn what you need to learn, and then if that framework is still serving you, of course, stay with it. And if it's not serving you, I think you should move on. And I knew that eventually I was going to want to open up more stores at some point in time. And so I decided to eventually move out of that framework. But there's a few little things that happened along the way before we get to that stage.
Which is crazy because weren't you studying business at uni at the same time?
Yeah. So I was actually, I think, prepping for a comp the time that we opened up.
Wait, so you were opening a business with your best mate, studying at uni for business?
Yep.
And prepping for a comp?
Yes, and so I actually never ended up going through with the comp. There's a few little mishaps that kind of led me down a different path, but the experience of going through it was awesome. And I think we were opening up whilst all of that was going on, and I ended up finishing the uni degree at night. I ended up deferring after the first 6 months. I really didn't want to keep going to uni. I don't even think I wanted to go to uni to start off with, but my parents had said, it's good to have something to fall back on. You never know when you're going to need it. And to be honest, there's been a few little times where the degree has helped. Like when I went and did the consulting for small businesses, they wanted me to have an official business degree or form of, I guess, what would you call it? I don't know, from a certificate from a proper educational institution. And so I wouldn't have been able to do that without it. So fair play to them. I actually ended up using it at some point in time. But
you didn't need it to start the supplement business.
I certainly didn't need it to start a business. And I'm not sure how much I actually learnt at uni either. I think the sort of business degree at uni was teaching you how to work in a business, not necessarily how to run a small one. And so I wasn't finding the things that I was learning, easily translatable to the actual small business space.
All right. So going from selling supplements out of your boot to opening a store with your best mate, everything seems like it's coming together really, really easy. At what point did you guys make profit?
Profit is it's always good to make profit in business. That certainly wasn't on the cards for the first year. And so for the first year, me and my mate Danny, still my best mate as well, even though we'd gone our separate ways. Most business partnerships don't sort of separate in any sort of civil manner. There's a lot of good friendships that I know of that have sort of fallen apart off the back of business going, not the way that it was intended. And so I'm really happy that we stayed friends and have been for 10 plus years now. And so yes, at the end of the first year is when we started making a little bit of profit. In the early stages, I think maybe some weeks we may have been turning over about $400
between you both
for the whole store for the week. So some days you would sell a protein bar, and some days you didn't make any sales at all. And I think that's something for people that are moving into business, and especially that want to open up a bricks and mortar location. There is no guarantee that anyone is walking through your doors. The small business space can be brutal, and I think encouraging people to move into it without doing a fair bit of due diligence is a very risky thing to do, and it's probably some advice that needs to be sort of filtered. And it was certainly an interesting time over that first year, turning over something from $400 a week, and maybe towards the end of the first year it was $2,000 to $3,000 a week. But that's turnover. So once you've worked out what it takes to even just break even with the various overheads that occur in business, you've got your fixed costs, the things that are going to stay there no matter how well the business does, and then you've got variable costs that will change depending on how the business operates. And to break even, from memory, you're going to need about $3,000 worth of turnover. So we started to sort of break even on a weekly basis, certainly not, recouping the funds that we had first put in within that first year. And so we decided to go separate ways. It just didn't look like there was any sort of real potential for this particular business to grow to a level where we could both take a wage that was significant from it. We would have been better off, at that time, both just getting separate jobs and working for someone else. We would have made more money that way. And so I had a little side hustle that I was doing, and I was able to sort of still have some savings that I was building up over that year. And I ended up just essentially paying him out everything that he had put in, and he ended up going into work for another larger supplement business as a manager. and he ended up moving into an area manager position that didn't even exist. He ended up creating that role for himself because he's a machine. Hopefully one day we'll be able to get him on, but he was also able to give me a lot of insights as I started growing. Like a lot of the things that he was learning in a bigger business that was doing really well, it wasn't translatable to me where I was in a small business. I couldn't use that information, but certainly as we started to grow, a lot of what he was teaching me like actually really helped. But yeah, he ended up going his separate ways, and he's done very well off the back of it. Like probably the most successful person in my sort of space that, you know, never went to uni, didn't get a degree, and that has moved up the ranks very quickly. He's currently not far off at like a GM position. I think he's just slightly under that at the moment, but that's for a multi-million-dollar business. I think the overall business does something like 70 million profit. The turnover, I can't remember, but it would be within the hundreds of millions. And so he's an absolute machine. You know, like I think he might have 100 plus retail stores under him over, you know, Australia. And so, yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge when you get to sit down with him.
So you guys separated in the second year of the supplement store business. And then in the third year, you decided to go through a rebrand. Did you want to tell the listeners what the old branding was and why you decided to take on the challenge of rebranding the supplement store?
Yeah, so we've kind of described what year 0 to 1 looked like, and from year 1 to year 2 I did start making a fair bit more profit. So maybe we're ending around the first year at about $3,000 turnover, maybe towards the end of the second year was $6,000 to $7,000 turnover, and because the overheads were so low, that's when I was probably profiting somewhere between $2,000 to $2,500 before taxes a week. And so I was able to, save some money up, and it made me a lot more confident going into a rebrand because I had the resources to do that. But the main reason that we went through the rebrand is we just weren't resonating with the framework that we were working in. And I think the sort of business name that we were working under, it was very bodybuilding focused, and we kind of saw the industry going towards a more fitness, nutrition, lifestyle sort of approach. And there's a few other things sort of happening which made me sort of make that decision. But at the time, it was very scary. Like, you've built a business up over a 2-year period. You've got apparel lines that have gone out there. Everyone's wearing your stuff. You've created social media pages, put marketing out there. You've developed, a business name in that area. And for you just to simply change into a new brand, it was very scary at the time. I had no idea how that was going to impact the overall turnover, profitability of that business that I'd worked so hard to create. And so it was a big thing at the time.
Especially back then, for the people listening, is Facebook and Instagram weren't such a big thing back then. Businesses weren't on there posting videos, they weren't running ads. And even though we were kind of late to the party, our competitors were still 3 to 4 years behind. So even with the rebrand, you didn't really have, Facebook ads or Instagram ads or jumping on stories and promoting videos as much as you do now. Back then, it was a lot harder. You had to get on the ground, you had to tell a lot of people, go out and meet people and say, hey, it's still me. We're just rebranding to make it, I guess, more appealing to more people in different areas of fitness.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Facebook would have been around, but people just weren't using it in the way that, we use it nowadays. I think Facebook would have been probably more adopted by the 40, 50-year-olds. I feel like they were using it like a photo collage at one stage. We were still on, I was, MySpace and Bebo back in the day. And so I didn't move over to Facebook for quite some time. Like when Facebook, I remember when it first came out and people started using it, adoption started to, increase pretty rapidly. I was still like, I'm not going to Facebook. Like, who uses that? That's an old people's platform. And so I probably carried that mentality for way too long, and I didn't jump onto the Facebook scene when I should have. And you kind of see a lot of the people that were early adopters. The following they had was massive just because they were on it from the start. And so, yeah, we were chasing our tails a little bit, but once we actually started moving in that space, I feel like we learnt quite quickly, and then I think became not reliant on it, but we were certainly depending on it for the growth of the business relatively heavily.
Yeah, I remember the very first Facebook video I did for you was with my phone, and we did it horizontally, not vertically, horizontally. And you were just standing there holding a tub of protein being like, hey guys, we have this protein. It's great. And obviously you listed more. You have great knowledge on supplements. And we posted it and we sold out of the protein.
Oh yeah, it was amazing.
People came in and was like, oh yeah, I saw your video. I'll buy that.
Oh yeah, it was like we discovered fire or something. Like we were like, oh, it's that easy. And I don't think video was actually that popular back then, which is probably why it was consumed.
There was no editing.
Well, no, there's no editing, but people were mostly doing like images. Like the businesses, if they were marketing on Facebook, it pretty much looked like a catalog. Like it was, all price-based stuff or, new product, just riveting stuff. And so the fact that we were able to do a video, I think was, probably a little bit ahead of what was going on at the time.
Yep. And then, so that was year 3. You went through the rebrand, and you called it Zion Nutrition.
Yep.
And then coming into the 4th year, which I think is probably I would say one of the pivotal moments, is when you brought on a full-timer.
Yeah, so that would have been from year 4 to 5. So yeah, we've been trading under the new brand name for that period of time. And then I met Mark. He came in as a customer, and he already had a job at the time, but we connected a few times, and I don't know if I offered him the job or if he asked if we were hiring. I can't remember exactly.
Well, you were working like 6 days a week, 10 hours a day for the past, now we're up to year 4 years.
Yeah. We did have Pedge. Pedge was, Bangers, Alex Bang, shout out to him. I think he was my first casual at that period of time. I don't think he stayed long because he became a personal trainer a little bit later. Pedge was probably the next casual that stayed on for the longest period of time. In fact, he's still with us. I love Pedge. He has been probably one of the most loyal people to me for such a long period of time. And whenever a business opportunity comes along one day, that's certainly one of the people I really like to bring in on it. Mostly just to say thank you, but because he's such a hard worker, he's so loyal. So the character traits that man has are unbelievable, and the success that he's had in his own life off the back of his hard work, people don't know, but he's doing extremely well. And Pedge has been great for a very long period of time. But the first full-timer that came on board was Mark. And that was kind of when I started to listen to a lot of motivational sort of stuff, and the business gurus that are on YouTube, and they were kind of being like, you need to work on your business, not in your business. And that's good advice for a business at the right time. Like the timing of that sort of advice is critical. And we probably jumped a little bit too soon, or I jumped a little bit too soon to be working on my business instead of in it, because you can do both. And yeah, I think I felt like I was taking a holiday because I was now not working 6 days a week, and Mark, I kind of threw him in the deep end. Of course, I did a little bit of training, and for him, it was kind of like, I feel like I gave him some floaties so he wouldn't sink, and he pretty much chucked those off straight away and just showed me that he could do freestyle. Like his skill set was good, and he was a very ambitious person, and it allowed me to take a bit of a step back. But then during that time, as I said, I feel like I was taking a holiday, but I did a lot of self-improvement. I upskilled myself in sort of the knowledge I had around business, and that did lead to some pretty cool things. But yeah, it was the first time I was really able to take a step back from the business.
Was it scary having a new face come into the business full time? Because at this point, it's been 4 years and you've been the main face of the business, the main, guru. I remember because I actually worked at the gym in Blacktown and built up, I guess, a relationship with all the members. So every time they needed supplements, I would send them down to you. So we were still working together as a team. But I remember everyone saying, oh, yeah, that big white guy at the supplement store. So you moving out and Mark moving in, were you kind of scared that you would lose customers because they thought, oh, Steve's not here?
So it was more scary for me to bring on a full-timer that was going to be spending more time in the store than I was, and than it was going through a rebrand. Like that's what it felt like. Because essentially, like you're building up personal relationships. When you're an owner operator of a business, like it's not the business name that people are coming in for, it's the person. And so I knew that connection was going to decrease at a minimum, but could be completely lost. And in the initial stages, we did see a downturn in sales because I just wasn't there. And it took some time before Mark built his own clientele up. And then, you're running a second pair of eyes over the business, and he started to implement things that I hadn't done. Specifically bringing in some of the bigger brands that people would just walk up through. I was always, under the impression I can sell whatever I need to sell, and I'm going to take an ingredient standpoint. If the ingredients are better in a less known product, I would prefer to give that to the customer. And so I never bothered with, bringing on the big brands like ON and EHP initially, which, are probably the only two brands that people would literally just walk up for. And that was a mistake. It was a big mistake because there are parts of the market where they don't really care what, the person working there has to say. They've seen marketing and they're going to come in and buy that product. And if you have it, they'll buy it. If you don't have that product, they're not going to buy it. And so the turnover did start increasing because he implemented some of those brands in store. And we saw some really good growth off the back of that. And essentially, he ended up turning over just the exact same amount that I was at, sort of the peak.
The funniest thing that I remember is when you were in the store full time, people would come in and they'd be like, oh, hey, Steve. But when Mark started working in the store full time, people would open the door and be like, oh, is Steve in? And they'd be like, oh, no, he's not in, but I can help you. And then they'll be like, oh, yeah, I'll just come back when Steve comes in. But it got to the point where Mark was in the store so much that when you were working, people would come in and say, is Mark in? Nah, I'll come back when Mark is in.
Yeah, that was that was something you had to wrap your head around. It's just like, hold on a second. I taught Mark. What do you mean that you'll come back?
This business.
Yeah, what do you mean you'll come back when Mark is here? But you know what? Once I put my ego aside, that was the best thing that had happened because it meant that this person was so good that they had built up a clientele that was loyal to them, that it didn't matter what I was going to say to them. They were going to buy off that person and only that person. And that was like a critical part to making that business work at that time.
And I know you said that when Mark was working in the store full time that you were kind of having a holiday. I was with you the whole time. I know it wasn't a holiday because you were actually working on your own supplement brand to run in the store.
Yes, that's true. I kind of forget about that. I feel like we've done so many things that, sometimes I forget some of what I would think of now as the smaller sort of projects. But yeah, when I was upskilling myself in the business side of things, I came across the concept of vertical integration, and that's essentially going back up the value chain. So say you own a farm, you have the inputs, then you go to the manufacturing level, you go to the distribution level, then you go to the retail level. Moving back up, surpassing the distribution level, because we would buy off distributors, and going to the manufacturing level and developing your own product and having a vertical line in store that you owned. And, the idea is that you can obviously make a lot more margin. For me, I was like, yeah, but I can also make a better product. And because I never relied on the big brands when I first started, it seemed like a no-brainer to me. I'm like, well, if I can develop a better product and I make more margin on it, then why on earth wouldn't I do that? And as I sort of have, had more and more experience over the years in the retail space, that was a critical lesson to learn because essentially, if you're good at what you do and you're an educated person and you can articulate messages well to the consumer, vertical integration can change the trajectory of your business. And so, I had developed a brand of supplements, and the brand of supplements was going to be Enhanced Supplements. As we said, we were trading under the retail store as Zion Nutrition, and the supplement brand that I was going to be releasing was Enhanced Supplements.
How did you come up with the name Enhanced Supplements?
So, I haven't always been a natural gym goer, and I loved that sort of feel to it, and we did want a name that was kind of cool and that was going to, capture a young market that was all about that sort of scene. But we wanted all of our marketing to be going to reach the middle-aged ladies, the young girls, and make them feel comfortable with everything. So we wanted to have a brand name that brought in the clientele that we most resonated with, but not exclusively block out the consumers that we also wanted to bring in. And so, it was kind of like a cheeky play on words when we first sort of brought it out, and it kind of made it feel like a hardcore product because they were all high stim products. And, we put the compound, into the logo. Yeah,
for those who don't know, the Enhanced logo, not the one that you're wearing, but the original Enhanced logo has a compound in the background. And we were like, oh, how funny would it be if we put the testosterone compound in the background, like, haha, enhanced.
Yeah,
test.
100%.
Not many people know that, but it's funny because when people come into our store and they say, do you know you've got the test compound in your logo? It's like,
yes, we do know that. That was sort of the vibe that we were going for. The vibe. I sound like a boss babe now. That's sort of like the way that we wanted to position things. And so I developed the product, and I was originally sourcing these products from America. So we'd gone to one of the bigger manufacturers over there that were producing some awesome products. We went to them, and they, we had gone through the sampling process. We had developed the label. We might even be able to put up a picture of that product if we can. And once we'd gone through the sampling, developed the label, we had shakers that we'd sourced from China. We wanted to bring out an apparel line to support it. We had tights that I think we'd probably sourced them. We were told it was the same manufacturing place as Gymshark, and they certainly felt like the same type of quality.
Did we order 3,000 tights?
No, I think it was 300.
Oh, 300, sorry.
It was 3,000 shakers per colour,
right.
I believe. Yeah, so that's where the 3,000 number came from. But yeah, that taught us how to import things from other countries, and again, like vital skills that we were going to use in the future. So 2 weeks before we were supposed to actually go into manufacturing, the TGA banned the main ingredient that we had in both the thermogenic and the pre-workout. And so I was not going to just release an inferior product into the market. Like when you're doing services, when you're selling other people's products, they can be of a certain standard and it can work quite well. If you're bringing a new product to the market, the actual product has to be good. You're going up against, established brands, established products in the market. You have to put out something that's good. And I was just not going to release something that was inferior. So I put it on ice. We had the business name, logo. We had the business trademark, the bank accounts. Everything was set up. It was ready to go. But I put it on ice and, found something else to do because I, wasn't going to go down that pathway in any sort of short time frame. And so it wasn't until I was just going to the gym, Fit and Fast Penrith, was still a loyal customer there. It was during the Christmas period. I think that had turned into a 24-hour gym at the time. So, you could kind of go when you wanted to. And that was kind of a new thing for gyms back then. I think it was one of the first ones in Penrith. That's a little side note. But yeah, I was walking through Penrith, saw that the graphic design shop that was right next to the gym, like literally connected to the same wall, was up for lease. And I was like, wow. I'm like, this is Penrith, this is our hometown. We have so many relationships here. I went and checked what they were charging for rent per week, looked at the fit out and said, is this workable? It wasn't ideal. It was a small shop, but I thought, what, we can actually probably make this work.
A small shop means less stock.
It does mean less stock. And at the time, you're working with limited resources. And so that was actually part of the attraction. Now, this was still right across the road from the store owner that I was working not that I was working for, that had the brand that I had originally opened up my Blacktown store under. So this seemed like a very personal attack once we opened it. But if anyone knows me, I'm not going to be opening up a business and putting funds into something just to spite someone else. Like, the actual business made sense. At the time, we also had a meal prepping company, which we can touch on in another episode. But for me, like, I'll just give you an example of how small of a risk this was for me to take on. So we were selling 12 packs of meals as the minimum size. We were making about $6 per meal. And inside a 12 pack, we were clearing easily $60 profit after expenses per pack. The rent for the property was like $400 or something per week. So if I sold 10 new meal packs to 10 new customers every single week as a result of taking on a new shop in the Penrith area, which we really hadn't expanded into yet, predominantly that meal company was Blacktown and surrounding suburbs, all I needed was 10 customers per week in order for us to cover the rent and some of the extra overheads of that business. So I often look for situations like this to minimize risk when we're taking on a new venture. How many sources of income can I extract from a new venture to minimize the risk? So how quickly can I get to this break-even point of the fixed and variable costs? And, what is the likelihood of actually, doing that? And so it was such a small risk for me to take on. However, there was a whole bunch of capital that was needed to fit out the store and, get everything up and running. But we did have the Enhanced Supplements business name, the bank accounts and the trademarks all set up ready to go for the supplement brand that I was going to release. And so it occurred to me, I'm like, well, Enhanced Supplements sounds like a mad name for a supplement shop. Why don't I just use that? I wasn't going to yet offer Mark a percentage in the Blacktown store, which ended up happening a little bit later on. And so I wanted to keep that business separate. And so this one was ready to roll. And so we executed on it. I think it was probably 2 weeks from finding the location to actually opening for trade. Extremely quick, but back in the day we weren't too sort of concerned about how pretty things look. We just wanted to get the ball rolling, and it turned out to be a very good decision.
And that's a trend that you guys will, I guess, see in our other business journeys, is that when Steve sees a business opportunity, he makes it happen within a week or 2 weeks. Like it's very fast from thought to.
Yeah, and I think to some people that might look like I'm just jumping the gun on things and haven't done my due diligence. For me, once I start understanding how a business model works, the only reason I identify opportunities is off the back of having understood the model well. So yes, usually it would take a lot longer. You want quantitative data, you want qualitative data, you want the numbers to be in check, but you also want market context and to really understand the market that you're moving into. But for me, because I understand our business model so well, when I look at an opportunity, the only reason I identify it as an opportunity is because it fits the business model. And so, yeah, it looks quick to a lot of people, but the reason I'm confident to pull the trigger quickly is because I understand our model.
And I believe this is the 5th year of the enhanced Blacktown store that you were opening the Penrith enhanced store, correct?
Yes, they're probably from about the start of the 5th year. Yeah.
And what's that statistic? Because I remember when we were in year 3 of the enhanced supplement Blacktown store, everyone was like, oh, congratulations, 3 years, you're making profit, it's so great. And there was one statistic that you said that I won't be happy until I surpass the 5th year in business.
So, the statistics change each year, but I think the last time that I looked, it was 60% of small businesses inside Australia fail within the first 3 years. And I think it's something like about 80% fail from the 5th to the 10th year. And I think they start dropping off quite rapidly after the 5th year. But just to make it to 5 years in business is a relatively, good achievement, statistically speaking. And so for me, that was something that I really wanted to achieve. If I could get to 5 years in business, survive 5 years in business, I would have at least felt like I had achieved something that I could be happy with, and probably, I guess, overcome a lot of the doubts and things that I had from, family members, friends, people in my network that probably thought I was a little bit too young to open a business, maybe didn't know what I was going to do, a little bit skeptical whether it was all going to work. And I certainly don't hold any resentment against anyone that sort of thought that in the beginning stages. It wasn't like I received any sort of open sort of skepticism, but it's there. When you talk to people, you understand the way that they're asking questions are like, have you thought about this? It's just like,
especially
more
because
than
you've never had a full-time job either. You've just jumped straight into your hustles and then business.
Yeah, I guess that's something unique. I have little casual jobs along the way, but yeah, I never had a full-time job. It was pretty much, straight from school to university, deferred university to open up a business, and I've never really been employed in a full-time capacity, and I'm 32 in August.
So at this point, you had Zion Nutrition, the enhanced supplement Blacktown store, and then you had
Zion Nutrition, the Blacktown store.
Yep.
Enhanced supplements, the Penrith store.
The Penrith store. So then you sent Mark down to the Penrith store to work in there full-time, even though Penrith was your hometown. Why did you decide to work in Blacktown and send Mark down to enhanced?
I felt that I could probably capture part of the market in Blacktown that maybe would have dropped off, but it was probably something that I was a little bit scared about. I just wanted to make sure that the Blacktown store was running 100% well. Not that Mark had proved that it wouldn't, but I wanted to make sure that the cash flow from that business was going to be stable, and the Penrith business was a new location, and so obviously it had a little bit more risk attached to it. But I was also going to offer Mark part of that business to become a business owner alongside with me. That was part of the proposal that I put forth to him.
Of the Penrith store.
Correct. And it wasn't of the Blacktown store at that period of time. And so that was the reason that he was there and not me.
Awesome. And then at another stage, you decided to rebrand the Blacktown store again. What's the reasonings behind that?
Yeah, so maybe I'll just quickly say how number 2 and 3 started, and that's why, because Blacktown was the 4th store that became an enhanced store. So the enhanced name took off really quick. I should probably even make the comment that Penrith store broke even within about 8 to 12 weeks. I think it was 8. All of the funds that were put into that business were recouped within 8 weeks. And like that doesn't happen. Like most businesses take about 12 months before the full investment is recouped and then it starts making profit. And it's because it took off and it took off fast. Like the Penrith market is good and Mark was a solid operator. But the people liked the name. It obviously resonated with people. And so there was a guy up in Wollongong. He was looking to open up his first store as well. And so, through our network, he reached out to me and said, can we use the Enhanced Supplements name? And I sort of floated a figure to him to, be able to use the name and whatnot. And he came back and said, look, man, it's a decent amount. Like I'm coming out, on my own. Like there's a bit of risk involved here. I just don't know that figure is acceptable. And so I said to him, after I talked to Mark, I said, you know what, bro, let's just do this one absolutely for free. It's going to be way easier to sell license agreement 2, 3, and 4 if we already have 2 stores. It's going to start to show a track record, especially if you're successful up there. And apart from that, we'll be developing a good relationship inside the industry. And I had learned by that time, relationships are everything. You never know what opportunities are going to come off the back of the people that you work with when you do right by them. And we certainly have that, both of us, we have that 51-49 principle. We're so happy to take 49% of the pie and leave the 51% because we know what to do with that 49%. And we're happy to give more to people than they give to us, just because we're happy to operate that way. We're in business for a long time, not a short time. We're not here to grab profits quickly. It's something that we want to do for a long period of time. And I believe if you offer more value than you take to other people, that will give you the best chance of sustaining success in business. And so he was number 2. Number 3 was a friend that I had for quite some time, but we had kind of disconnected for a few years, reconnected, and he sort of saw what I was doing because I don't think he was around. No, he might have been around when I first started the Blacktown store, but probably after about year 2 sort of dropped off the map. And we reconnected and he sort of saw where I'd come and I started speaking to him about our business model. And he was working in the tunnels at the time, hard work. And he still had a love for the fitness industry, was just getting back into it. And I said to him, bro, like, why don't you do a store? And I showed him the model, showed him what it looked like. And he was keen. And so he ended up opening inside St. Mary's. Now, we had a Penrith and Blacktown store at the time, so putting someone smack bang in the middle that was likely going to end up drawing customers from both of our stores, again, you have to have a philosophy in business that you're offering more value than you're willing to take. And of course, this was a paid license agreement because there was going to be a financial impact. And the amount we charged the license agreement certainly wasn't going to represent what we were likely to probably lose in customer crossover. But again, we wanted to work with another person in the industry, and that has also ended up paying off long term in my perspective. And so that was number 3. And then we obviously had Blacktown trading under Zion Nutrition, and we rebranded that to number 4. And so, yes, we went through another rebrand.
And I guess, what do you offer as when you give out license agreements? Like, what's the benefit of having multiple enhanced stores that you don't own, where 2 of them at the moment out of the 4 are license agreements? Like, what does that do for the business or the brand?
So there's 2 frameworks you can pretty much work under. You've got license agreements, which is where they pay to use the name, and we kind of also give them a lot of extra help. One of them is the marketing that we obviously offer. The number 2 is the relationship we have with the suppliers, and so often they can achieve discounts by being a part of our network that may not be achieved, opening up independently. We also obviously have some brand recognition in the Western Sydney space, but essentially a license agreement gives a lot of flexibility to the owner. We don't charge them royalties. We don't tell them what time they have to open and close. We don't tell them what products they need to stock, what prices they need to uphold. There is a lot of freedom inside that model. Inside the franchise model, it is a little bit more expensive to set that model up, and that was probably one of the bigger considerations when we first started moving into the license agreement space versus opening up a franchise. But within franchises, the head office or the franchise owner does restrict the franchisees in more ways than what you'd find in a license agreement. So there's usually royalties charged, there's usually a buy-in price, there's usually uniforms, everything becomes standardized. Just like you see in a McDonald's, everything looks the same. And so I'm not saying that we'll never move to that model, because there are some advantages once you start to grow. And how you do business can often sort of minimize the restrictions that we have inside of our franchise sort of network. It's not something that I'm completely opposed to, but for the moment, the license agreement model works really well for us, and it offers a lot of flexibility to people.
Awesome. So when the other stores came on as license agreements, and then you obviously rebranded the Blacktown store, that means you and Mark in your partnership now owned the Penrith store, the Blacktown store, and the license agreements from Wollongong and St. Mary's were going to you and Mark, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yep.
And at that, I think during that period of time, Mark had also bought into 50% of the Blacktown store, which was a pretty amazing thing because it was a decent amount that I charged to come into 50% because it was a very healthy cash, flowing business.
And you also proposed to him an offer when opening the Penrith store as well.
I might leave that one until he comes on because I think that was a really interesting proposal.
It's a good story.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people would have taken the risk that was kind of involved with that. But for anyone that actually had a really solid mindset and ambition, they could definitely see the upsides. And I think if he looked back on that now, he would say, yeah, that was all right. And so, that's where the fourth store became an enhanced. We then found the fifth one at Fairfield, and we had a friend called Nancy, and she was able to help us open that store. She ended up getting pregnant along the way, and so her focus has changed, and so she ended up moving outside of it and really focused on, bringing the little one up, which is really cool. But she also held that business down during COVID, which was a very tough time.
So you and Mark opened a store in Fairfield. What made you guys open a store in Fairfield? Like, what were the key things that you looked for, and were you wanting to open more stores?
Yeah, so I think at that time I became more confident in, my business acumen and the way that I could see this model working in different areas. Fairfield didn't have any supplement stores, I think, for that particular suburb. It's not a massive suburb. But there were no sort of competitors that were obvious to us. Some surrounding suburbs definitely had some key players, but for us, Fairfield looked like a good opportunity. There was enough gyms. We did our quant and qualitative sort of research before we moved in, and I decided that this was a good go. And again, probably within about 2 weeks, we were signing a lease and starting the fit out.
Awesome. And then COVID hit.
Yeah, that was tough. For that business, I feel like I don't know where that business would be now if it could have just kept putting runs on the board from the get-go. It's doing very well now under Reggie. Hopefully we can bring him on one day too. He's a machine and he's done really well in growing that business. And he left sort of the corporate space where he had a pretty cool job. And he decided to actually follow his passion and take the risk of moving into business and joining the enhanced chain.
And without diving into another business that we'll talk about in another episode, but the meal prep business that we had alongside everything that's happening, every store that came up, we were able to offer the license agreements or even your own stores with Mark the chance to actually sell the meals that we were making in store.
Exactly, yeah. So that was obviously something that helped us increase the size of the footprint that business had in the Western Sydney area, which was very good, and it made it a lot more sellable, which we ended up selling that business and taking a pretty, crucial pivot, which has really influenced, the trajectory of the stores, but the trajectory of our sort of business life as well.
And then the next story, just a quick story, was you and Mark took over a supplement store that was already a supplement store, but rebranded it into an enhanced. Did you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, so that would be the first supplement store that we bought out from an existing, it would have been a competitor, although they were in a different suburb and we didn't really sort of treat them that way, just because we didn't have any sort of direct dealings with them or anything. But technically a competitor in the Western Sydney space. Mark had a relationship with the guy that owned that business, and he was really cool about everything. He kind of wanted to chase some other ventures, and so he gave him, I think he gave a tap to Mark on the shoulder, but I think Mark was continuously tapping him on the shoulder, saying, man, when the opportunity comes up, please consider me. And he did, which was great. And so we bought that store out, and that was the first established store that we rebranded into an enhanced. And that was the third store the fourth store for Mark and the third store for me as a part of our enhanced chain. I originally was invested in Fairfield and we would have had the 4 stores, but I sold my portion of Fairfield just, I think, towards the end of last year. And it was more so to give Reggie the fact, the ability to own the majority of that business because he's working in it and putting so much hard work into it. And we like to have the people that are, really, driving the ship, owning the largest percentage of the business, because I think that's the only way to truly incentivize them and give the business the best chance of success. And so I'm at 3 stores within the enhanced chain in terms of ownership. Mark is still sitting at 4. And then the other ones are license agreements.
It sounds like a common thing that once a full-timer comes in and shows that they've got good work ethic and actually putting an effort into the business, you give them part of the business.
Yeah, I know that a lot of business owners are really sort of hesitant to give any sort of ownership away. For me, I don't really see myself just as a business owner. I think I am really like an entrepreneur by DNA. I like creating systems, businesses, having other people be able to facilitate those businesses, not in a way where it's just like, well, I'm working outside the business, you guys are the workers inside it, because I'm always wanting to give them way more upside for that particular business than I would receive myself. It's just because I have that entrepreneurial sort of DNA where I want to move on to the next thing, and it's business that I love the most. I don't care whether it's a nail salon, a massage parlor, a meal prep business, a barber, whatever it is. I love business so much, and the way that I approach it is just different to other people. And I truly believe the only way that you can incentivize your team to do the best and to stay with you long term is by giving them a slice of the pie. And if someone owns 10% of your business and they can grow it beyond that 10%, my opinion is, what have you lost? Like, if the businesses exist to make profit, you can make the exact same profit despite not having the same level of percentage in ownership. And I like doing business with people. Like, that's what business is about. And if I can give them a chance and an opportunity and a framework where they can progress themselves, I really like doing that. And so, I've never had an issue with giving equity or ownership away in a business that I own.
That's awesome. And now, after all these years, we've built a really great team in the stores that you own, you and Mark. Mm-hmm. And now your position in the stores is bringing in vertical lines, looking over the businesses and looking at different opportunities and everything like that. Did you want to quickly touch on just, I guess, the benefit of having your own lines inside the store as well?
Yeah, I think we might even attack that on another day, just because, yes, there's been an amazing benefit from having internal lines, and we've done more than one brand, but one of the brands that really sort of took off became its own business, and it's a B2B sort of brand, B2B meaning business to business, we're not going direct to consumer, and that brand ended up making its way across 50 different retail stores plus in Australia, which has been really cool. And we're just kind of revisiting that particular business and looking to grow it over the next little while. But I think I might just put that one on hold, and we'll attack that another day, because I guess there's just so much that comes into that business, and I don't know if we'll cover it today.
That's true. This story has been going on for a very long time. There are things that we did skip over, but one of my favorite things about opening the different stores is that when we open it, we don't pay someone to do a professional fit out. I love that we get the whole team together. We paint the walls ourselves and sand them. We go to Bunnings, we buy the shelves, we hammer them together, and the whole team sets up almost every single store. I think that's one of my favorite things about the enhanced crew. But this has to be one of my favorite stories of how you started the supplement stores.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a grassroots approach. It's like we grow everything organically. We've never had massive surpluses where we could just go in and deck places out. As much as we've given little renovations along the way, our core business, I guess, elements that cause success are certainly not how pretty our stores look. It's the way that we serve people, the products that we hold, and the care that we really do take in servicing the clients that come to us. And so, a pretty store has never been the thing that we focus on most. Of course, we want to give facelifts along the way and make sure that people are still enjoying the space. But it hasn't been a core part of our business.
Awesome. So that is the grassroots approach that Steve took to start the supplement stores. Did you want to tell the listeners, I guess, the different episodes that are to come? Not every single one, but just touch on maybe a few of the different businesses or topics that we are going to be recording in this podcast?
Yeah, I think we'll probably go over a lot of the marketing stuff that we do. We've had quite a few of our strategic organic pieces, I would say, go viral. There's been quite a few that have entered the millions. I think anything from 3.2 million views all the way up to 6.7. And these aren't necessarily like traditionally cool businesses. These are, cafes, these are footwear stores, these are, service product-based businesses that are local businesses in Western Sydney. So to get that type of virality from content, it obviously takes a little bit of thinking and I think some skills to go along with that. But yeah, we've had videos that have entered the millions of views. We've had easily over 30 videos in the last 12 months go anywhere from 100,000 up to 900,000, and weekly we'd have content pieces that are doing 10,000 plus. And so I think we'll definitely delve into the marketing side of things. I'd like to touch on some of the consultancy work that I've done, as that seems to be increasing, especially more so into the corporate space, and sort of it being given bigger challenges than some of the smaller businesses that I've, sort of being a part of. But I think the marketing, the consultancy, we can touch on the barbershop that we also ended up purchasing off the back of COVID. So we've probably had that for 12 or 13 months. I think we can look through just, I guess, some of our network, bring some other people on, get the insights from them, the successes, failures that they've had in business. And I can explain, probably more in depth some of the successes and some of the failures that we've experienced. And, if people can learn from that, then that's amazing. But yeah, I think marketing, overall business, some of the people inside our network, that's essentially, I think, what we'll try and cover.
Awesome. The next episode, we definitely have to dive into the Mighty Macro meal business, which is the healthy meal prep business that we started when you had just the Blacktown store.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the most pivotal businesses that taught us a lot in business because it was a food business.
Yeah.
We also built that business off the back of, our relationships in store, selling in store, but also that's where we taught ourselves digital marketing. That's where we taught ourselves paid marketing, because that's the only way that we got customers from.
Yes.
And then we exited out of that business, but we will save that to the next podcast episode.
Awesome. Sounds good.